Goodbye, Stoneman Willie. The true story of James Murphy. Last year, Stoneman Willie, a mummified man displayed in Reading, Pennsylvania, U.S., was finally buried under his real name, James Murphy. His body, preserved for 128 years, was laid to rest with respect. This funeral marked the end of a long and unusual journey. James Murphy's life was a mystery. He was an alcoholic and died in prison of kidney failure in 1895. Because James used a fake name when he died, his family wasn't told of his death. He was then turned into a mummy by a mortician, trying out new ways to preserve bodies. His hard-as-stone skin explains his nickname, Stoneman Willie. In 2023, efforts to find his true identity led to the discovery of his real name. People in Reading then suggested that he be given a proper funeral. The funeral was attended by locals who wished to pay their respects. Saying goodbye to a man who had become a part of their lives was a moment of closure for Reading's people. Stoneman Willie, or James Murphy, now rests peacefully, a reminder of the past and the importance of remembering every individual's story.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to English for You. I'm Mike.
And I'm Laura.
And today we are beginning our look at Goodbye, Stoneman Willie, the true story of James Murphy. Now, had you ever heard of Stoneman Willie or James Murphy before you read this article, Laura?
Of course not.
No, it's one of those interesting stories that comes to us from America. America is a very big country, as I'm sure most of you know, and it does have actually some really interesting local history. I mean, we've all heard about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and things like that. But each state, and in fact many places in each state, have their own interesting little unique stories, which many of the locals would know. But if you've never been there as a tourist, or if you're not from there, you might have no idea about these things. And this one is even more interesting because it involves a dead body. So let's check it out. The article begins, last year, Stoneman Willie, a mummified man displayed in Reading, Pennsylvania, U.S., was finally buried under his real name, James Murphy. Well, that's good.
Okay.
I'm glad. I don't know how long he's been waiting to be buried, but I guess it's more than like a couple of days or something like that. And also, he has that very interesting nickname, Stoneman Willie. Well, yes, he was buried under his real name. So Stoneman Willie is, I guess, how many people know him. That's the name he's most famous by. But his real name is a much more normal name, James Murphy. And James Murphy was finally buried. When you bury something, you dig a hole in the ground, you remove a bunch of dirt from the ground, make a hole, stick something in that hole, and then cover it with the dirt that you took out. So often we would think of a dog that buries bones. They do that in cartoons. I don't know if dogs actually bury bones. And with dead bodies, we do it because it's just not nice or clean or safe to have dead bodies lying around. So if you go to a graveyard or a cemetery, this kind of place, this is where we will bury dead bodies. Here's an example sentence. Queen Elizabeth II was buried at Windsor Castle next to her husband, Prince Philip. How nice. People do often choose to get buried with their family or their loved ones if they can. And in this case, he wasn't, he didn't die a few days before and then get buried, which is, the normal way of doing things. In fact, he died a long time ago, and we know that because he was described as being mummified.
Mummified. We all know the word mummy, 就是木乃伊.
It's like your mother.
No!
Oh, a different mummy.
Yeah, okay. It's like the Egyptian mummy, right? Mummy.
Like
Okay.
King Tut.
对，木乃伊，它是个名词。可是刚刚课文提到的 mummified 就是被制成木乃伊的，它是个形容词哦。所以我们看到是在城市 Reading，OK， 它是位于 Pennsylvania 的东南部，那它是以其悠久的历史而闻名哦。那不过我们中间又看到了 bury 这个动词，就是埋葬的意思。 For example, after our pet goldfish passed away, we decided to bury it in the backyard. And we also saw 介系词 under 在这里本课的上下文是指用什么的名字知名，所以课文整句是说去年美国的Pennsylvania 的 Reading 市展示的木乃伊，也就是 Stone Man Willie 石人威利，哇，他终于以他的真名，也就是 James Murphy 被安葬了。
Yeah, very, very interesting. So back to the article. His body, so that's James, we should just call him James. James Murphy's
his
body.
Real name.
His body, preserved for 128 years, was laid to rest with respect, which is, of course, how you should lay a person to rest. And yeah, there's another word that also relates to mummy, his preserved body. That's why you would make a mummy or why someone would be mummified, right? To preserve them. So to preserve something is basically to keep it safe from kind of breaking down or falling apart. In the case of things that are living things, we preserve them by stopping the air from going in, stopping them from rotting. In the same way, if you have food that you want to keep to eat the next day, you don't just leave it sitting out on the table. It will dry out. It will start to smell if you leave it for a while. No, you put it in a container. You put it in something where air can't get to it. You preserve your food in the same kind of way that you would preserve a body. So he was preserved. They kept him kind of safe from rotting and smelling and falling apart, which is, of course, what would happen if he was just lying out there in a field. They kept him safe from breaking down, from decomposing, from rotting, in other words. Here's an example. Yeah, we do this often with food. It says to preserve the freshness of the fruits, they are often stored in airtight containers in a cool environment. Another actually word for jam is preserves, right? With jam, you take fruit like strawberries.
没错 ，preserve 就是防腐的意思哦，它是个动词。那我们刚刚有提到mummies， 对不对？就是木乃伊。So, for example, the ancient Egyptians used various methods to preserve bodies, such as mummification. And we also saw the phrase lay somebody to rest. 就是安葬某人，不过要注意的是 lay 它的动词三态的变化为 lay, laid, L-A-I-D, laid. For example, after a long battle with illness, the family finally laid their beloved grandmother to rest. 所以我们看回课文，他说的是他的遗体被保存了128年内，那就得到了这个很多尊重或是敬重的下葬。
So they laid the grandmother to rest. We could also say they buried their grandmother. Lay to rest is just a kind of gentler, softer, kinder way of saying that. And when you lay someone to rest, you probably have a funeral. And that's exactly what James Murphy had. It was 128 years late, but he did get that funeral. It says, this funeral marked the end of a long and unusual journey. A funeral is a ceremony or a celebration, basically to say goodbye to the person. Funerals aren't really for the dead person. They're for the people who are left behind, the people who are sad. The dead person doesn't really care. But the people who are left behind, you know, it gives them a chance to get together, to cry, to talk, to tell happy stories about this person that was so important and that they will miss because that person has died, unfortunately. Here's Jessica. Jessica's grandfather wants a small, simple funeral with only close family and friends.
Okay, funeral 是什么呢？就是葬礼的意思啦，它是个名词哦。For example, attending a funeral is a serious event where we say our final goodbyes to our loved ones. And here we also saw the verb mark. Mark 在这里呢，上下文是个动词哦，是指着、意味着或是有标志的意思。所以课文整句是说，这场葬礼意味着一段漫长而不寻常的旅程的结束啊。
All right, so we know James Murphy died a long time ago and was only buried recently, but who was this guy? Why did this happen to him? It says James Murphy's life was a mystery. Okay, so he wasn't a famous person necessarily. He was an alcoholic and died in prison of kidney failure in 1895, a very long time ago. And I guess he had a bit of a troubled life. He died in prison. Prison is where you go when you are guilty of a crime. you've been caught for something, you go to court, they say, you did that, you're going away to jail or to prison for 5 years, 10 years, for the rest of your life because you did something bad and you're dangerous to kind of just let walk around. So that's where we send people to stay after they commit crimes. For example, after being caught for stealing money from his company, the businessman went to prison for 5 years. Okay, so commit a crime, go to prison. And he died of kidney failure in 1895. Kidneys, these are organs in your body, kind of located in your lower back area. You have 2 of them, and they basically clean your blood and help to produce the pee that takes all of the dirty stuff in your body out of your body. Very important. The good thing is you only need 1, I think, right? Sometimes people give a kidney to a loved one or something like that. But yes, very important, just as important as your stomach or liver. Your kidneys do a lot of good work in your body, keeping you healthy. For example, drinking enough water is one of the ways to help your kidneys do their job properly. And yes, drinking too much alcohol, being an alcoholic, will definitely make your kidneys work extra hard.
Exactly. Okay, so he was an alcoholic. Alcoholic 这个名词就是酗酒者。那我们又提到这个片语 die of something， 因为什么而死亡。For example, unfortunately, a lot of people die of hunger in certain parts of the world. 我们又提到了 prison 这个名词就是监狱。For example, the notorious criminal was sentenced to life in prison for his numerous illegal activities. 那我们有提到他的一个病情就是 kidney， 跟 kidney 有关的，待会会解释就是肾脏的意思，它是一个名词For example, the doctor explained that the patient would need a kidney transplant to improve his health. 那我们有提到它是有肾脏衰竭的所以其中的名词 failure 这就是指器官的衰竭的意思啦。所以整句课文提到的是 James Murphy， 他生平是一个谜耶。那我们知道他是一个酗酒者，然后他在1895年因为肾衰竭在监狱去世
All right, so James Murphy was just an unknown prisoner who died in jail, not a famous guy. How did he become Stone Man Willie? Well, let's get into that. Because James used a fake name when he died, his family wasn't told of his death. It says he was then turned into a mummy by a mortician trying out new ways to preserve bodies. Oh my gosh, this would be totally illegal today. And a mortician, kind of a scientist who studies dead people, can use him to test out new ideas. Again, this should not happen. I would say would not, but definitely should not happen today.
所以由于这个 James 他在死亡的时候是用了假名他的家人并未得知他的死讯。然后一位什么呢 ？mortician 就是礼仪师或是殡仪业者的是个名词他就试验了新的保存尸体的方式，将它变成了木乃伊。
And his hard as stone skin explains his nickname Stone Man Willie. Yeah, when they mummify someone, they dry them out, and of course your skin will become very hard, almost like stone, and that's where the nickname Stone Man Willie came along. Nickname is basically a casual name given by maybe your close friends or your family to a certain person. If they know you well, or if you're famous for something, you might have a nickname. For example, the 200-centimeter tall basketball player got a funny nickname in high school, Shorty, because he's definitely not short. His friends would call him Shorty, but that wouldn't be on his passport or his ID card. It's just used by his friends and family.
Nickname 就是外号绰号还有小名这样的意思，它是个名词For example, Sarah earned the nickname Sunshine because of her cheerful and positive personality. 所以课文提到说，哇，这个 James 他那如石头般坚硬的皮肤就解释了他的绰号为什么叫做石头人威利 Stone Man Willie.
So in 2023, efforts to find his true identity led to the discovery of his real name. They went back in the old history books and the old records from the prison, and they figured out, oh, this guy was actually James Murphy.
所以2023年为了寻找他真实的身份，这里用到的 identity 就是身份。他的真名就被揭开喽。
All right, so people in Reading, that's the town in America, in Pennsylvania, People in Reading then suggested that he be given a proper funeral. People said, it's 128 years, but let's do the right thing. Let's give this guy a funeral like he should have been given a long time ago. All right, so that sentence includes our language in focus, so let's take a moment to explore this sentence pattern.
OK, 我们看一下今天的 language in focus 我们提到的是主词一 suggest or demand, recommend, command 等等接上 that 然后再接上主词二，然后呢有省略 should， 所以后面要接原形动词这样子的用法在美式英文当中，我们常常会帮这个 should 省略OK， 像是有一些字是特地的，像是要求啦 demand, ask, require 这些字，或是建议啦 suggest, recommend, advise 等等，或是有命令 command, order， 还有祈求 beg， 然后 insist 坚持所以我们在整句当中，我们通常就会把 should 省略我们来造个例句会比较清楚。The teacher suggested that the students review the lesson before the exam。有没有注意这里的 review 我是用原形动词因为 should 被省略了嘛 OK， 那这个句型可以变化成虚主词 it 为首，而且不写出明确动作者的句子，通常使用于发话者的身份是并不重要的时候。举例来说，原句可能是这个 Authorities advise that passengers arrive at the airport at least 2 hours before the scheduled departure time， 就是有关当局建议乘客提前至少2个小时抵达机场，以确保这个计划起飞。那其实这个 authorities 没有那么重要，因为比较重要的呢，就是说这个乘客应该要提早2个小时这件事情，所以我们就可以这样改写用 it 虚主词为首。It is advised that passengers arrive at the airport at least 2 hours before the scheduled departure's time.
All right, so when people finally discovered who Stone Man really was just last year, they decided to give him a proper funeral. It says the funeral was attended by locals who wished to pay their respects.
Pay one's respects to somebody 就是向死者表示敬意For example, friends and family gather to pay their respects to the deceased and share fond memories. 所以回到课文提到就是说呢，在葬礼上参加的当地人想要表示一些敬意
So they're paying their respects and saying goodbye to a man who would become a part of their lives was a moment of closure for Reading's people. I guess it's kind of embarrassing for the town. We did this to this guy a long time
Poor
ago.
James.
Today we know that's a really terrible thing. So they wanted to bring closure for themselves and for him as well.
所以对 Reading 的人来说，告别一个已经成为他们生命中一部分的人，他想要是成为一个 closure， 就是一个事件或是时期的结束。
So Stone Man Willie, or James Murphy, that's his real name, now rests peacefully, a reminder of the past and the importance of remembering every individual's story.
OK, reminder 就是提醒所以课文是说 Stone Man Willie或者是 James Murphy 现在安息了，提醒着过去以及记住每个人的故事的重要性。
All right, we have our chat question. I know Laura has some. What are some ways we can show respect to people who might not have family or friends?
I guess some ways we can show respect to people without family or friends are by being a friend. As simple as that, including them in activities, listening and understanding their feelings, sharing hobbies, and maybe offering help when needed. So I think these actions can create a welcoming and supportive community for everyone.
Great. Reach out to those people because sometimes they might be too shy to reach out.
Exactly.
And they do need people. People need people, even people who died 128 years ago. Thanks for joining us, guys, for that interesting story. We'll have more great stuff for you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Vocabulary Review. Bury. Sadly, Phil's cat got so old that it died. He buried it in his backyard. Preserve. Mom showed me how to preserve the apples from turning brown by adding a bit of lemon juice. Funeral. Many people attended the president's funeral after he died because he was such a popular man. Prison. The thief was caught stealing a car and was sent to prison for 2 years. Kidney. Eating too much salt can be bad for your kidneys because it makes them work harder. Nickname. Samantha got her nickname Speedy Sam because she always runs the fastest in her school races.
智慧小补帖
Mummified. Alcoholic. Mortician. Closure. Reminder.